He never dreamed of being a star. He just wanted to survive silently in a world that didn't understand him. We saw him in movies, we heard about him in the news, but none of us knew how deeply he suffered. The Joker's story didn't begin on the big screen. It began where pain meets silence. Inside a man no one saw, and who the whole world suddenly couldn't forget. Joaquin Phoenix was never your typical Hollywood actor. He was too real, too wild, too honest for a fake system. After the death of his brother, River Phoenix, in the 90s, he disappeared from the radar. We thought we had lost him, but he just kept rebuilding himself. Brick by brick, roll by roll. No rush, no show. And then he appeared, the Joker. The offer to play this character was like a blow, and a chance, and a fear. Because it's not just a costume and a laugh. It's a character that can break you from the inside if you're not careful. But Joaquin agreed. Not for the Oscar, but because he himself had worn a mask for years, and he knew what was hiding behind it. We watched him lose 24 kilograms. How he isolated himself from the world. How he studied the laughter of people with mental disorders. But we didn't see the main thing. How every day, as he became Arthur Fleck, he faced his own demons. With shame. With anger. With loneliness. This was not a game. This was the truth, shown in its most brutal form. When the film was released, the world was shocked. Some were outraged. Some gave a standing ovation. But no one remained indifferent. Because the Joker is not just a villain. He is a mirror. For each of us. And the voice of those who are not heard. And Joaquin, he was silent. He didn't give interviews. He didn't play PR. He just stood on stage with an Oscar in his hands and talked about love. About pain. About animals. About the chance to be better. And we suddenly saw who he really was. Not a star, but a person. Vulnerable. Deep. Real. This story is not about the Joker. And it's not about movies. It's about how we all wear masks. How society creates monsters and then fears them. How talent and pain can coexist in the same body. And how sometimes one movie can change not just a career, but the world. We've all seen him. Thin. Stooped. With a strange, horrible laugh that runs through his body. We didn't know whether to laugh or cry. We didn't know who to fear more, the actor or the character. But no one knew what was happening on the other side of the screen. How one man, day after day, step by step, killed himself to give birth to the Joker. This was not reincarnation. This was open-soul surgery. Joaquin Phoenix started out starving. Director Todd Phillips gave him one simple task. To look as if society had long since devoured him from the inside. And he began to cut. Not the role, but himself. Each plate had 200 calories. For the day, an apple. Sometimes boiled beans. And that was it. No exceptions. No compensation. It wasn't just physical hunger. It was isolation. Joaquin disappeared. For everyone. He stopped talking to his friends. He wouldn't pick up the phone. He wouldn't leave the house without a reason. He wouldn't even watch TV to avoid any emotions. Because the role of the Joker isn't about acting. It's about feeling like you're being thrown out on the world's garbage dump. And something in him broke. His body was losing weight, and his consciousness was losing support. He became paranoid. He began to fear that everyone could see through him. It seemed to him that even the camera was not filming him, but taking an X-ray. And then there came a moment when he looked in the mirror, and he didn't recognize himself. His eyes sank, his cheeks disappeared, and his smile became an almost accidental spasm. And then he started laughing. For the first time. Laughter. What became the calling card of his Joker was not written in the script. It was laughter from the inside. The laughter of a person who no longer understands where reality is. Joaquin practiced this laughter every day. For hours. But not just in front of the mirror. He went to psychiatric hospitals. He listened to patients with a rare neurological disorder, pathological laughter. Their faces had no joy, but there was laughter, and it was scary. This is exactly what the Joker's soul was supposed to be like. At some point, Joaquin stopped getting out of his temper. Even when filming was over, he didn't talk to the crew. His silence hung in the air, like an explosion about to happen. And when someone from the staff spoke to him, he didn't answer in Joaquin's voice, but in Arthur Fleck's voice. Tense. Too polite. A little too cracked. When the day came to shoot the subway scene where the Joker kills 3 men, something went wrong. After stop, he didn't stop. The cameras turned off, but he continued to sit in the shadows. His hands were shaking. He was laughing, to himself, and no one dared to come near. The director later admitted, At that moment I was scared. Not for the movie. For him. No one had the right to stop this process. Because the actor gave himself completely. Every take, every scene was a catharsis. The dance on the stairs is not choreography. It is improvisation that has become a symbol. Joaquin went out into the street, started moving, as if something had come out of him, like a demon who had finally received a body. And we felt it. In every step, in every movement of his shoulders. And then, the most dangerous. When the film was over, Joaquin couldn't get out of the role. For the first few weeks after filming, he couldn't sleep. He would dream of laughter. Not his. The Joker's. He wouldn't recognize himself in interviews. He would become aggressive. He would become withdrawn. He would say he felt like his brain had changed its chemical formula. And really, playing a mentally unstable person for a few months, you start to question your own stability. But that's what made his performance unforgettable. Critics shouted, "Brilliant." The audience cried, applauded, left the theater in silence. The film became the highest-grossing R-rated project in history. And Joaquin won an Oscar. But he didn't smile. He stood on stage, silent for a second. And then he said, "We create monsters, and then we punish them for becoming them." And those words weren't about the Joker. They were about himself. About us. About the world. Part 2. Dangerously real. We were all waiting for the movie. But no one was prepared for what they saw. Not even him. The world froze. The premiere of Joker was just days away, and something was already burning in the air. This was no ordinary movie. Not just a comic book. This was something more and scarier. Because the movie showed what everyone is silent about. Violence. Humiliation. Toxic society. And how monsters are born from it. And while the public was preparing to buy tickets, governments and police were preparing for something worse. The FBI warned. Possible armed attacks in movie theaters. The mass media shouted. This movie may incite violence. Parents recalled the shooting in Colorado, where the killer had previously called himself the Joker. And social media was torn between art and danger. And Joaquin was silent. Even those close to him began to avoid him. Some jokingly, some seriously, but they all said the same thing. You've gotten too used to the role. We're not sure who you are now. And he wasn't sure either. Before the premiere at the Venice Film Festival, he sat alone in his dressing room. He was shaking, not from excitement, but from fear. What if I crossed the line, he said later. What if I showed too much of the truth? When the movie finally came out, the world went crazy. In its first week, Joker grossed over $100 million. The lines at the cinemas were like a star concert. People came twice, 3 times. Some left the hall in tears. Others in a stupor. Others were angry. Everyone was shocked. And here the most interesting thing began. Someone called the Joker an icon of a generation. Someone, a symbol of terror. And someone, a mirror of our rottenness. This is dangerous, they wrote. He romanticizes violence. This is a masterpiece, others replied. Finally, someone told the truth. And Joaquin found himself at the center of this madness. His face was on every poster. His voice was in every trailer. But inside he was fading. He felt bad. Physically. Emotionally. He couldn't enjoy his success because every night he woke up in a cold sweat. He dreamed of himself laughing, and all around was silence. People weren't listening. People were afraid. People were screaming. And he was alone again. And this wasn't a dream. This was life after Joker. On the talk show, he was asked banal questions. How much weight have you lost? Is it true that you don't like Hollywood? But he didn't want to answer. Because the real questions were different. Why does this world make people like this? Why do we ignore pain until it turns into rage? But they weren't asked. Because society isn't ready for such conversations. And here he is standing on the red carpet, in a suit. His eyes are shining. Not from joy. From fatigue. From pressure. From the fact that everyone who approaches him sees not a person, but the Joker. And he has to laugh again. The same laugh. But now, not in character. Now, as a shield. Once, during an interview, he got up and left. In the middle of a question, the journalist asked, "Do you think the film can inspire someone to commit a crime?" And Joaquin just silently got up and left. Then he came back, but not as an actor, but as a person who has lost the line between reality and the fictional world. "I can't be responsible for people," he said, "but I know that each of us has something of Arthur Fleck. And until we admit it, we are all in danger." In Los Angeles, at one of the screenings of the film, The police detained a spectator. He applauded too loudly during the murder scene. Someone got scared. Everyone evacuated. It was hysteria, or catharsis, or a new reality. And Joaquin didn't want to be its symbol, but it was too late. He was awarded, thanked, and given a standing ovation. And he nodded silently, because he knew that most people didn't understand what they saw. They were looking for entertainment, and they found themselves. And so, as he stood on stage, holding a golden statuette in his hands, the world waited for a speech. But he did something unexpected again. He didn't thank the studios. He didn't talk about the role. He talked about cows, about mother's milk, about compassion, about what we stopped feeling. The hall was silent. People didn't understand. And he was just tired of being the Joker. And he tried to be himself. It was a victory, but not a triumph. Because sometimes fame is just another cage. And freedom comes when you dare to step out of the role, even if the whole world wants you to stay in it. Part 3. Nobody laughs anymore. We always thought that pain was something to run away from. That if something hurts, you either heal it or forget it. But in making Joker, we learned something even more important. That pain is something that shapes you, if you let it speak. When Joaquin Phoenix slimmed down to that intimidating, almost skeletal figure, he didn't just lose weight. He lost a part of himself. Simple things became difficult. Getting out of bed, concentrating, not passing out during dance scenes. But it was even more difficult to keep the line between Phoenix and the person he became every day in front of the camera. Arthur, a lonely, broken, rejected man by all society who laughs, only. Director Todd Phillips once said, "I'm not making a movie about comics. I'm making a movie about the truth." And the truth turned out to be scary. We didn't want the audience to see the actor, so that they wouldn't say, "Oh, that's Phoenix playing the Joker." No, we wanted them to forget who Phoenix was, and believe that the Joker exists. And to do that, we had to break everything. He didn't learn lines, he lived the scenes. He didn't have a clear choreography, his body moved as pain told him. Those dances that so amazed the world were born not in a rehearsal studio, but in the darkness of his apartment, when Joaquin walked barefoot, slowly, to the mirror, and tried to recognize himself in every movement. He no longer lived during the day. The Joker came at night, and the deeper we got into the shoot, the harder it was to tell when it was over. Sometimes he would sit on the floor for hours after a take. Just sit and laugh to himself, without a camera, without an audience, because he couldn't do it any other way. We remember the day Joaquin cried, not because of the scene, just because. He was standing on the set, his makeup still wet, and he said, "I don't know where I am anymore." And we didn't know either. Everything around him was changing. Technicians were running around with equipment, the light was changing, but he remained inside his madness. And the scariest thing was not the madness on the screen. It was that he was no longer afraid of this madness. One scene is in the bathroom after the murder. It wasn't in the script. It was born the moment he got into the bathroom and started slow dancing. Nobody stopped him. Nobody directed him. The camera just silently watched. Because everyone felt, this is not acting. This is transformation. He said he could hear music that no one had turned on. That there was a motif in his head. The composer, Gilder Gudnadottir, sent the first notes before filming began, and Joaquin began to live in this soundtrack before the scenes were even shot. His body memorized the music before his brain did. But the deepest abyss awaited ahead, the scene on the Murray Franklin show. This is the climax. This is the moment when the hero finally stops being a victim and becomes a predator. We rehearsed it, we knew the lines, we had a plan. But when the camera turned on, everything did not go according to plan. Joaquin improvised. He said things that were not written down. And they were scary, because there was too much truth in them. What do you get when you cross a loner psycho with a society that ignores him? This phrase was not written by the screenwriters. It was born on the set. And it hurt. Because we all understood, we are part of this society. And we ourselves made this monster. After that scene, there was an absolute vacuum. Silence. No one applauded. No one joked. Because we all saw not the Joker. We saw ourselves, in the crooked mirror of his eyes. And when the film was finished, it wasn't over. Joaquin couldn't return for a long time. To himself. To his usual life. To talking about other projects. He needed time to feel the ground under his feet again. Because playing someone who loses himself, you can get lost yourself. It wasn't just a role. It was a sacrifice. It was a revelation. It was painful, scary, cruel. But it was the truth. And the scariest thing, we didn't know that part of this truth already lives within each of us. Usually, movies end with the final shot. The actors take off their makeup, sign posters, give interviews, and go back to their normal lives. But not this time. Not with the Joker. And definitely not with Joaquin. After the premiere, the world exploded. Everyone was talking about his performance, how he turned into a walking alarm, how he caught psychosis and made us believe that evil doesn't just exist. It develops, grows, screams into the void while the world laughs. He didn't just play the Joker. He became him. But what happens to a person who has been immersed in darkness and spent too long there? Joaquin Phoenix began to avoid people. He was seen on the streets with his eyes downcast, headphones on, as if he was trying to escape reality. On the red carpets, he seemed detached. And during interviews, he didn't always answer directly, lost his mind, and remained silent longer than the hosts expected. He left a part of himself somewhere on the steps of that fictional Gotham subway station, and he couldn't take it back. His voice had changed. Now there was a slight tremor in it, especially when he was asked about his emotions. His face seemed to have lost its former playfulness. Everything looked like rehabilitation, but not physical, emotional. A person who has experienced pain does not pretend that everything is fine. He is silent, and this silence was louder than any speech. In conversations with loved ones, he repeatedly admitted, this role changed him more than anything in his life. It showed him how thin the line is between inner pain and outer explosion. It made him doubt everything, even his own talent. He said, if I had to destroy myself so much to create something, was it really worth it? Of course, there were awards. Oscars, Golden Globes, endless ovations. But Joaquin didn't come for them. He never chased fame. He was concerned with something else. How to find yourself after you've lost yourself. At some point, he simply disappeared. Not for the world, for himself. He went to the desert. He didn't warn anyone. He turned off his phone. And there, among the rocks and sand, he felt silence in his head for the first time in many years. He did not return the same. He became calmer, slower, almost wiser. Something new appeared in his eyes, not the shadow of the Joker, no, but the gaze of someone who had already seen the darkness, but did not allow it to completely destroy him. Someone who had walked through the fire to emerge not as a star, but as a human being. And that's why we told this story. Not about the movie, and not about the character, and about a person who, for the sake of truth, went where most people are afraid to even look. Because sometimes, to understand who we are, we need to allow ourselves to disappear. And only when the darkness speaks to us from within can we choose to stay in it, or return. But as completely different people.